Welcome to the Disney Parks Podcast with your hosts, Tony Casanova from DisneyByTheNumbers.com and Parkhopper John from WDWParkhoppers.com. Keep your hands, arms, feet, and legs inside the podcast at all times. And get ready for the Disney Parks Podcast.
Have you ever come to Orlando and you're the person that has to make all the dining plans, all the fast passes, get all the tickets? Well, we have a service that can help you do this. This is the best service. They are themeparkconcierge.com. You can call them up at 407-257-9973. Tell them your plans. They'll send you a little profile, get some information about you and your traveling party and what you want to do, what you don't want to do. And then they can set up a custom plan for you. And they'll take you around the parks. They'll make the dining plans. They'll get the fast passes. They'll take you to Walt Disney World. They'll take you to Universal. They'll take you to Busch Gardens, to SeaWorld, to Legoland, to all of those places, and they will do all of the work for you. Contact them at themeparkconcierge.com. Check them out on Facebook at facebook.com/Ramon VIP Concierge, or email them at ramon@themeparkconcierge.com. I am telling you, you will not be disappointed. And if you tell them the Disney Parks Podcast sent you, you'll get 10% off your order.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Disney Parks Podcast. We have got a great show for you tonight. Our guest is Christopher Schmidt. He's the author of the Complete Guide to Run Disney, the Disneyland Edition. He's an avid runner. I can't wait for you to hear his story. I can't wait to hear about all the Run Disney coolness. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, Christopher Schmidt.
Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Absolutely our pleasure. Yeah, thank you for coming.
Yeah. So we'd like to ask everybody, Chris, how your Disney journey began. We probably can figure out how your running journey began, but how did your Disney journey begin? How did you become, a Disney enthusiast?
My personal Disney journey started as early as I can remember. I'm one of those. I'm born and raised Southern California. Very easy access to Disneyland my whole life, and my parents have just instilled and harvested a Disney love that has lasted. We would go as a family often, birthdays, Christmas, pretty much every school break, and it's when I reached my adult life, I just kept it going.
Yeah. Do you remember the year of your first visit?
It would have had to have been when I was 2 or 3. I have an older sister who wouldn't have been terribly patient waiting for me to grow up. So we were very young the first time I went. I do have vivid memories of rides that I was too short to go on. So that has to be pretty young when my father and sister would go on the Matterhorn, and I get to sit there and not go on it. I remember that vividly.
Yeah, but you probably got a Mickey bar or a churro, so.
I believe so, but that's shallow compensation when you don't get to go on a roller coaster.
All right.
True that, my friend. So you're a Disney fan growing up. Tell us how you. We're assuming, and you should tell us a little bit about that too. How did your passion for Run Disney get started?
Well, John, it's interesting. We were talking earlier, and you mentioned an accident you had. I tore my Achilles tendon playing basketball in 2007, and I had previously been a fairly active distance runner, but when that accident happened, I was going to use that as an excuse to not have to run anymore. I actually didn't really enjoy running. I just did it. But a very dear friend of mine was running in that following the 2008 Disneyland Half Marathon, and I hadn't even heard of Run Disney before that. Something I've mentioned before is I worked for Disneyland and didn't know about Run Disney. Part of the onus on writing
That's
a
amazing.
book. Honestly, it's something that encouraged me to write a book like this. Is that it's going to succeed without me, but I want Run Disney to be well publicized. but I was able to recover and train, and I joined her in the 2008 half marathon and have been doing it ever since. It's even coming off of a pretty major surgery. You know how they are. They're flat. The races are just extremely entertaining.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And you don't have to sprint. You barely have to run if you don't want to. And
yeah, you just have to stay in front of the balloon ladies.
Indeed.
That's my goal.
I have never been.
Yeah, you've never been there. Trust me, it's scary, man. Yeah. You know, you mentioned it was flat. It's a funny story. We wound up doing the A1A in Fort Lauderdale here because we're Florida residents.
Yes.
You forget how well everything is laid out, especially for Walt Disney World, because, you know, you go 2 miles in Fort Lauderdale and you have to go over a bridge. And that bridge, I thought, this is where I die. Because it started right before I got to the crest. My heart is literally beating through my skull. And I'm like, why am I not at Disney? Everything's flat at Disney. The worst thing I have to deal with at Disney is the curve of a road.
Indeed.
So I feel you, man. I feel you.
It is funny. We've all complained about the overpasses at the Walt Disney World marathons and so on. Disneyland has that pretty dramatic incline going over a freeway, but it's really, really short. But like you just said, John, when you want it flat, when you expect not to have any hills and you have a tiny one, it can be a little more pronounced.
So somebody that writes the Complete Guide to Run Disney, how many Disney races have you been in, Chris?
I have participated in 9 half marathons.
Right. Wow.
6, I want to say 5 or 6 10Ks, and a few of the 5Ks.
Okay.
I'm going to be gravitating toward the 10Ks. Mostly, I tell myself it has nothing to do with laziness, but it's just they are almost exclusively inside the parks, especially at Disneyland.
Oh yeah.
And the half marathons are really well laid out, but within 13 miles, you're going to be spending 10 of that on city streets, and I much prefer the 10Ks where you don't go out on the streets at all. You're just in the park.
Now, have all of those been Disneyland races, or any of them out here in Florida?
I have been out. Fortunately, I managed to get out for one of each of the 4 Florida races. I just completed the Grand Slam, as I say, with the Wine and Dine last November. I was able to go out there for that. I find them equally wonderful. It's hard to. I think it's just because they're run by the same people, but it's both the Florida and the Disneyland events are incredible.
So you've been running. I sort of kind of derailed your question. So you've been running in the races. You love Run Disney. What was the spark that got you to, I think I'm going to write a book? Because that's not something you just decide to do on a whim. That takes a real spark of inspiration.
I have been a writer, writing online mostly, and professionally I do business writing, white papers and press releases and so on. A friend and fellow writer hinted to me that I should turn my Disney passion into a book, and like you just said, I didn't have that spark. I wasn't aware that was something that just anybody could do. She introduced me to Theme Park Press, and Anthony, at least you know how amazingly approachable and accommodating Bob McLean is. Mm-hmm. He, knowing I had no experience with it, it helped me with the process, helped me get focused, and then he gave me a shot. And it was a bucket list item for me to write a book, John, but I didn't know it was on my personal list. I didn't think that would be something that I could ever do. And Theme Park Press and this friend of mine made it possible. Wow.
That's a great story. So could you give us, I don't want to give too much away because obviously we want everybody to run out and go get a copy of it, but could you kind of give us kind of a brief overview of what they can expect to find in the Complete Guide to Run Disney, Disneyland Edition?
It is phenomenally entertaining. We can start there.
I like
No,
that.
I tried to make it,
I like how you went that route. That was awesome.
I tried to make it as helpful as I did entertaining. I want it to be both. My belief is that if you have, just like with the races, John, if you have any Disney interest at all, you will enjoy Run Disney, even if you don't think about running personally. I tried to do the same thing with the book. If you have a Disney interest, if you have a running interest, you are the perfect audience for that. But if you even slightly think you want to be part of something like this, you absolutely should. A Run Disney event is something. It's like you said in your book, Johnny, being there at the rope drop or trying to be the first one into the park. You know, these are things that you can only experience in this way. When you're in a Run Disney event, there's a few thousand people involved, but by the time you are running through the castle, or running past the World of Color light show that's running, you're there almost by yourself. It's the amount of people that a Disneyland park can swallow when it's not really open except for the racers. It's incredible, the exclusivity. And then you have all the characters are out, the music is going, the lights are on, hundreds of cast members are lining the course to cheer you on. It's really not like running at all. It's transformational. It's an incredible experience.
Yeah. That's true. And the other aspect is not just all those things you said, which is absolutely 100% true. It's the runners themselves, because I don't know if you've run a lot of non-Disney races, but I've run a few, and you don't get the same level of interaction, entertainment, motivation. I don't crack or hear as many jokes cracked as I do when I'm on a Run Disney race. It just is a truly different experience. Everybody is so, even, in a race where I knew I was like 10 seconds from getting swept, I hadn't trained for it, I wasn't feeling well. We were all still having a blast and cutting up and having a good time, because it's just the runners make it an even more enjoyable experience.
You're absolutely right, and I hope I don't preclude a future question here, but I prefer, or my favorites are the Star Wars weekends, both the Florida and the Disneyland, and it's exactly what you said. The level of participation of costuming in any of the weekends is incredible, but Star Wars, I think as many spectators dress up as racers, and that's another thing to help carry you through, especially if you're doing one of the longer races. Is just there is so much to look at, so much people watching, and it's also enjoyable. You don't realize what you're doing is actually something that's pretty hard.
So it'll be interesting, when your Star Wars land in Disneyland and ours opens. Will the Star Wars races kind of go through the Star Wars land? Will they end there? Can they start there? It'll be interesting to see how they incorporate those into the races.
I couldn't imagine they wouldn't do it. When one of the Walt Disney World races didn't run through the castle for 1 year, I thought there was going to be a revolution. If you can picture a Star Wars weekend, thousands of people participating in that race, and then not get to run through Star Wars when it's open, especially you guys, you won't be able to get into Star Wars land for the first year, probably, when it's open.
Probably not.
You absolutely won't get on a ride unless they have fast passes worked out. But to be in the Star Wars half marathon on Star Wars, weekend with Star Wars land open, and you don't get to run through it, people are probably going to do it anyway. They're going to go over the wall.
Yeah. I mean, that's why we're going to the Avatar pass holder preview, because it's probably the only 2 hours we'll ever get to see it in the next year.
Absolutely.
So would you say, Chris, that this book is for a beginner Disney runner, or a seasoned runner, or maybe somebody that wants to think about getting into Disney races?
I believe it's all of the above.
Okay.
I am not an expert runner, so I don't have tips for expert runners, but I do talk about them. And I believe it's, like I said, I think it's entertaining enough at every level. I talk about Jeff Galloway quite a bit. He's an inspiration for me, both Disney related and just general fitness and running. An amazing human being. He's so generous with his time. I love seeing him at all these weekends. And then I provide a lot of nuts and bolts about just negotiating a specific Run Disney weekend at Disneyland. On the the Disneyland half marathon weekend is over Labor Day, and it's already crowded on the weekend. Then you throw in a holiday weekend and a Run Disney event. If you go there thinking you're going to walk up to the starting line, or even if you think you're going to walk up to Starbucks or a drinking fountain, you are going to be disappointed. A lot of what I've tried to cover are those pitfalls that you don't really think about unless you've been part of something this popular. And if you can get through those things, there's no reason not to absolutely enjoy yourself. But something simple could derail your entire weekend. Just like not getting what you thought you would be able to get at the Runners Expo. And, if you get there at the wrong time, the expo can be an absolute nightmare, and it's nobody's fault. It's just you got there at the wrong time. So I try to address matters like that more from a travel guide standpoint, as well. There's I believe a lot of running insight in there, but it's mostly a Disney travel guide as it pertains to running, as opposed to the other way around.
Yeah, where your book is, I think, personally most helpful is for those people who may be kind of used to the Walt Disney World Run Disney, and we know where to go. We know we're going to go to the expo, which is at ESPN, and we go to the Milk House or whatever they're calling it now, and you pick up the packets. Then we go over to the whatever the new name for the building is, and get all the other stuff and the expo hall and all that good stuff. I think what makes your book useful, because it's the Disneyland edition, is it's a helpful guide for people who are not familiar with Disneyland or people who are so used to Walt Disney World, they need that extra guidance when they come onto the other side of the country and things aren't in the right place, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. You've pegged it. When the Florida events, there's, I think, twice as many people, and so they have their own difficulties. But you get on a bus and they get you to the starting line. At Disneyland, you are on your own. And they're going to face an entirely different experience at Disneyland. It's, as far as Run Disney is related, it's an equally wonderful experience. But yeah, you in Florida, you can get on a bus and they will get you to where you need to be. And, of course you have to be early, but at Walt Disney World, if you're early enough, you get in your car and there's parking and there's room and you have time to walk to the starting line. At Disneyland, it doesn't work that way. There's essentially one parking lot near the starting line, and everybody's trying to get there at the same time. And then if you aren't driving, and I recommend you don't, absolutely. I cannot stress highly enough that people stay close to Disneyland and be close enough to walk to the starting line. I can't imagine being in traffic before trying to run a half marathon. That's not. I follow Jeff Galloway religiously, and he doesn't promote a pre-race traffic jam, as far as I remember. Just both Florida and Disneyland, just be early. Absolutely, be patient. I know it's 4:00 in the morning, rolling out of bed, and it's likely cold even in California. But just do it. There's no amount of snooze alarm sleep that's going to overcome not getting to your starting corral, and that's a big part of it. I've been less than an hour early, to my shame, to one of these races, and I almost didn't make it to my corral.
Wow.
You think I have an hour. I'm half a mile away. I'll be fine. Nope, because thousands of people have that same impression that all they need is an hour. it's just not that easy.
Yeah. At a Disneyland race, where typically is the starting line?
It's almost exclusively now over between the ESPN zone and the Disneyland Hotel on Disneyland Drive. A few of the Tinkerbell half marathon events used to start in the parking lot of the Paradise Pier Hotel, but that has since been moved to Disneyland Drive, and it's as well organized as it can be. I mean, the Florida events are incredible. I cannot imagine getting all those people to the race and in the corrals and getting the corrals moving. It seems to take forever if you're in one of the deeper corrals, but it has to. I mean, they really don't have any choice. At Disneyland, the biggest race we have, you're gonna stand there for a long time. If you're back in Corral J, it doesn't matter that the race is smaller. It's gonna take a while. Right. But like I say, there's nothing else you can do about it. I've been part of rock and roll marathons that weren't a third of the size, and the starting was chaos. And that's not a knock on the rock and roll people. Just they maybe having a bad year, whatever. But Run Disney can't afford to have a bad year. Disney as a company can't afford to have a bad year. They are in the habit of impressing people, and they really do a good job of it.
Yeah. So what do you think, I know John runs a lot of them, and, I've only done one, but what do you think makes a Disney race really different from, your local or your national, race? Why does everybody want to run a Disney race, and why isn't everybody running the New York Marathon or the Boston Marathon, for instance?
They are a peerless entertainment company. They know exactly how to put on a spectacular event, even for tens of thousands of people. The New York and Boston and so on, they have the prestige, and so you're always going to draw the biggest crowds for those. Seeing Mickey Mouse, being able to give Mickey Mouse a high five as you cross the finish line, seeing and being able to pose with your favorite characters along the entire course, even out on the street. Like I said, being in the park when it's closed, except for the runners, with the music going and the lights on and the fountains are going, and you have, the Disneyland Fire Patrol is out there clapping and cheering you on. You have hundreds of cast members. Sometimes the monorail is going with cast members hanging out of it.
Wow.
It's just, if you think Disney, you think spectacle, and it carries over to the Run Disney events. You cannot compete with this company when it comes to putting on a show.
Yeah, funny story about that. The first 5K that we did for Disney was over the Princess half marathon weekend years ago, before they added the third race. And you could literally, we were not running for time. We were just trying to finish a 5K for the first time ever. But you could actually see in the timer where we didn't really get time, because what you do is you start in the parking lot close to the entrance of the park. Then you run away from that towards the far end, and you go kind of backstage, back towards, where test track is. And you come out like at Mexico, right?
Yeah.
And you could actually see my times go from like nominally okay to really, really crappy, because once we hit World Showcase, like I stopped, because I had never seen, the Epcot promenade completely empty except for the few of us who were running through, with the music going and the torches lit during the day. I mean, I literally just started walking. I think my jaw hit the ground. So it truly is a spectacle, like you say. And it's overwhelming, especially if you're like more of a Disney fan than a runner. I had to keep, let me rephrase that. My wife had to keep reminding me, John, we got to get to the finish line. You will be swept. Keep going. Come on. So yeah, I totally agree with you. It's a whole different animal. It's just great.
That's why I recommend to even people who don't like running. I was one of them before I even started this. It's not running around a track. It's not running because you're in trouble. It's like you say, you get to see things that you don't even if you are at Disneyland on the rope drop, you get the park to yourself, and you get to run around the park for 3 to 4 miles at a time.
So let me ask you this question. I know that you're a Disneyland person, but do you have a preference for Walt Disney World races or Disneyland races?
Just because of my sentimentality, I am really attached to the Disneyland races. But the Walt Disney World races are, and this is going to sound like blasphemy from Southern California, but they are equally impressive and wonderful in my mind. Just having done the Star Wars 10K in Florida, it's incredible. You spend the entire time in Epcot, and you do that loop around the boardwalk, which is equally wonderful. To compare a Disney race like this, they say in Kill Bill, you have to compare it to every race that is not run by Disney. Between Walt Disney World and Disneyland, I cannot pick a favorite.
Understood. As a true Disney fan, not being able to pick a single favorite makes sense to me.
I will say that the Disneyland Pirates of the Caribbean is unquestionably better than the Walt Disney World Pirates of the Caribbean, but that's a personal grievance I have.
That is true.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, very true.
Although, I think Shanghai beats both of those.
I would love to be able to make that determination.
I would too. It's all based on what I've seen and heard. So Chris, what would you tell somebody that's never done a race, Disney or otherwise? What would be some advice to say, hey, go out, give it a try? How should they start? Things like that.
I would say sign up for a 10K, and that's hard for me to say because those really fill up quickly, and I'm always disappointed when I don't register in time. The 5Ks are, of course, easier, but if you want to get the full Disney experience, even though the 10Ks are not cheap, you get 4 miles inside of the Disney parks at Disneyland and Walt Disney World, but the Disneyland specifically. You run through both parks, and you don't leave the park for however long it takes you. I think you can take 2 hours to finish a 10K before you get swept. Don't hold me to that, anyone. I don't want someone to keep a 2-hour pace and then get picked up. But I think that is the case. Even if you can't run a 10K, this is not like running. Sign up for one of these just to experience it. Know that you can handle 6 miles on your feet. You don't want to show up for this and not make it because of a true physical limitation. I apologize for implying that wouldn't be a consideration, but do a 10K. Jog if you want. Walk fast if that's your level. But John, like you said, you will have time to stop and see things and do things, and that's I get that the elite runners want to set personal bests, and these are perfect courses to set something like that because of how flat and accommodating they are. But I think they're doing it wrong. You do not want to hurry through these events.
Yeah, you don't. One of the best suggestions that we've ever heard and we've passed along is, if you want to enjoy yourself, they've got stationed characters along the way. Run from character to character.
Yes.
Yeah, beat the miles down by, you've got Minnie Mouse at mile 1, and then you've got Stitch at mile 2.1. So take the time and run through that, mile or so, and then you're going to stand there and wait in line for picture. Not very long, but you run from character to character. You'll have plenty of time to stand there and get your photos taken, and you'll still make pretty decent time. If you can start and stop, and that's not a big deal for you. Have you ever? Now, there's another thing that Run Disney people do, especially here in Walt Disney World. I don't know if they do it so much at Disneyland. is, especially on the longer races, because the parks open after the races start. They like ride rides in the middle of the races. Is this something that you've ever done?
We do not have that. Disneyland, I heard folklore of the original. There was a full marathon at Disneyland before Run Disney became an entity, and I heard that some rides were open during that, but that doesn't happen now, and it hasn't since I started doing it in 2008. That would be incredible.
Yeah, that's sad, because like Animal Kingdom is usually what it is most people try to ride the Yeti or the Expedition Everest Journey to the Forbidden Mountain. So like my wife, every time she does the marathon, there's always a picture of her riding it. And the cast members, and this is unofficial, so don't quote me, the cast members may or may not, depending on how busy they are, allow the runners to sneak in, and jump on a ride it, get the picture, and then keep running through Animal Kingdom, because, Animal Kingdom opens, 9 o'clock, and depending on what corral you're in, your start time may work out to where when you hit it during the marathon race, because that's the only one you hit Animal Kingdom on, you can actually ride the roller coaster in the middle of your run. So that's a goal for some people. Yeah. Have you not heard about that?
I know.
That would be a blast, but no, in all of the Disneyland races, you start your first 1 to 4 miles is in the parks. And on the half marathons, when you come back onto Disney property, you don't go into the park. Sometimes you run right through downtown Disney. Other times you're in some backlot areas. Right. But no, you're not in a position to get to ride the ride. At the beginning of all of the 10Ks now and most of the half marathons, World of Color is going.
Oh, wow.
That's nice.
That is a really nice touch. You run around the entire Paradise Bay, and the lights for that, it's usually dark. Again, like you just said, depending on what corral you start in, but it's usually pretty dark. Lights are going, water's going, music's going. It's amazing.
That's awesome. We one of the things that we always love to do on some of the races at night, and this is the thing, Run Disney's done away with any night races here. Yeah. So they used to have night races, and back when they used to run the night races, like the Food and Wine, because of the time of year, Wine and Dine, not Food and Wine, Wine and Dine half marathon, because of the time of year, a majority of the lights were up for the Osborne family lights. And so one of the things that we used to love to do is we just tried to get to Hollywood Studios as fast as we could, so we could sit in the lights for Osborne family lights and sit for a minute or two and enjoy it. Because it's the one thing my wife loves to do more than anything. So, so that was kind of fun. So yeah, Tony, I'm shocked that you didn't know about that. There's a
I never heard that.
There's a whole counterculture of that. Yeah, because the races are running in the parks, and the parks open at 9. So the slower runners and or later corrals, if you time it right, you could maybe ride a ride. Right. So it's kind of a fun little deal.
Yeah. This last November was my first Wine and Dine half, and so I knew about it running at night, and I would have enjoyed that, but I was never part of it. So one of the criticisms this year was that they're sad that it was no longer a nighttime race, but that was not something I had been exposed to.
Well, it's sadly it's missed, because when you're running against, you're not so much on all the day races, you're not necessarily in Florida not running against time, although that is a factor. You're really running against the sun coming up. Yeah. Because if you're in a later corral, and my wife is a great runner. She's not super fast, but she's usually in one of the later corrals. If there's Corral T, she's usually in like Corral M or N. So she has to wait a while to get started. And if she's doing like the longer races, like the marathon, she's running at 1, 2 in the afternoon, because because of how long it takes for her to get through and just when the race starts rehearsal, she's really dealing with heat.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing that I really miss about the night races. I don't know exactly why. Well, I do, but Run Disney, I really wish they'd have kept those going.
I think it was
ahead,
the traffic issues that they had closing those roads. Like Park Dump, I think was their problem. And now with all the construction going on practically every road going in and out of Disney, I don't think it was feasible.
Yeah, you got tens of thousands of extra runners going through the park at 8 o'clock at night.
In your book you mentioned something about like the runner's etiquette, which I knew nothing about my first race. People were schooling me in the corral on what to do and what not to do. So maybe give us a couple tips on some runner's etiquette.
Yeah, and those are just suggestions. It's customary. No one should get really upset in anything they're doing at Disneyland, in my belief. But you get a bad stretch, or you get a cramp, or something that can make you easily upsettable, and it doesn't even matter if you're at Disneyland. So just the etiquette guide are just some things to think about when you got that many people in close quarters, and there's some switchbacks, there's some 90-degree turns, there's a lot of pinch points, plus you have a lot of people who aren't looking directly where they're going. There's so much to see and a lot of entertainment. But the big one for me is don't stop on the course. I'm not fast, but I like to run when I'm running, and it happens all the time. And I don't really blame anybody. When you see, Kylo Ren, you're going to stop if you're not expecting it. And just the most helpful thing in that regard is if you can get over to the side before you stop, or a running courtesy is to raise your hand when you're about to slow down. That's helpful.
Sure.
But I appreciate people who appreciate the spectacle, and so I'm not really upset about it. But I've run over some people.
Wow.
Yeah, the worst is when you've got people who have found I'll try to say this as gracefully as I can, found their way in an upper corral so that they can go slower on purpose.
Yeah.
And you've got, people in Corral B or even C and D who are trying to really run well, and they've got these slower runners who either just got lucky or found a way to get into an earlier corral. That's as safe as I can say that.
Yeah.
But we've heard stories. We've had friends who've done that. They're doing what they would normally do, but because you're in an earlier corral, they just slow up, and they've just been run completely over. So that's one of those things that you always have to stay to the right as far as you can if you're going to go slow.
Yeah. The one I'm really a stickler on, and actually emotional about, is if you are going to wear a costume that's cumbersome or elaborate or looks like something you can't run in, and you run past me later in the race, then I'm not okay with that. If you are wearing something that's hard to run in, don't show me up by passing me. I'm kidding. I'm kidding about that, but I tell a story. My personal white whale are these three kids in the Huey, Dewey, and Louie outfits, incredibly well assembled and put together, and something you absolutely shouldn't run a half marathon in.
Right.
But in several Disneyland half marathons in a row, they caught me from wherever they started, but they caught me at about the mile 10 mark, and we would do our own Jeff Galloway back and forth. Like, they would start walking, I'd pass them, and then when I slowed down, they'd pass me again, and well, I never beat them, and so I'm just kind of stuck on that.
That's horrible.
It's unacceptable.
It's So you mentioned costumes, and we talk about it. The Disney runners have some of the most inventive, creative, and enjoyable costumes. Is costuming like a prerequisite, or you don't have to run in costumes, right?
Not a bit. It is just a means of expressing yourself, and I love it. I have never worn a costume, but it's an integral part of the race for a lot of people, and I love it because of that. If you start to tire a little bit in the half marathon, or like you say in Florida, as you're getting to the later part, and you don't want to start thinking about the humidity, you have all kinds of free distraction around you, and it's not just part of the park. It's the participants, and like we said in the Star Wars, a lot of spectators will get out there, and not just signs and handing out water. They're actually in full regalia. Like groups of them will dress up. It's really entertaining.
Yeah, we had a funny situation happen during the one of the princess races. A bunch of guys dressed up like princesses, and they wore full-length princess gowns, but they made them out of like...
Wait, did you say guys were in full-length princess gowns?
I did not stutter, my friend. Yeah,
okay,
guys dressed up as princesses. But they made the costumes out of, I don't want to say, they made the costumes like out of felt. When you're running, you want to wear things that breathe and wick away moisture. These guys were wearing basically sweat box dresses and running. They got 2 miles in, they were like, dude, we didn't even think about what these costumes were made out of. My wife just looks at him and goes, suckers, and just keeps running. Just, she's compassionate when she's on a run. So that's probably the funny story. They looked great until they got about mile 3, and they looked like they'd been hit with buckets of water. And I felt for him. I was worried about him. Thank God it was just like a short race. They didn't have to go too far.
So did the dresses make it to the finish line, or were they thrown in the trash can halfway through the race?
No, they made it. They finished.
Wow.
They finished it. They looked awful.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, they'd lost weight.
Maybe that was a goal.
That is something that it is not intuitive for everyone, that the Princess Half Marathon Weekend and the Tinkerbell out here in California, they're open to all racers. That a lot of people just assume that it's just for women, but that's not the case. Go sign up. They are as entertaining and well run and well managed as any of them. And yeah, wear Tinkerbell wings if you want. It's all part of the experience.
No.
I'll tell you something. I'll be honest with you. There is no better way to score points with your significant other than to dress up like a princess or a Tinkerbell. I'm not even kidding. You put on some Tinkerbell wings, and your wife is going to love you forever. If you have daughters, they're going to love you forever. And I'm not embarrassed to say it. My very first half marathon medal was a princess half marathon. I didn't care if it was a princess. I didn't care what it was, because I did 13.1 miles, and there was nothing you were going to tell me about it. I did it. So who cares, man? We're just having fun.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not going to wear a felt Princess Tiana costume, but if I can't get into a Star Wars race on a certain year because the registration filled up, I will undeniably I'll sign up for the Tinkerbell.
Probably something that we should mention, which we left off the list of questions, is typically a Disney race is a little bit more, and I'm using my air quotes, a little bit more than a normal race outside of Disney?
Yeah, that's, if beyond being beaten by a Mike Wazowski, I would say if I have a criticism, it's that they are but they are expensive. And despite how I feel about that, I understand it. You draw so many people to your incredible event, you can't give it away, or you will draw too many people. Disney is aware of that, and they're not trying to upset anybody, but they know. Well, I mean, they're also in the business of making money, so they're gonna try to do that too. Until attendance drops off considerably, they don't have any incentive to charge less. And that's unfortunate. It's part of it.
I tried to do the math one time. I figure, because sometimes they'll say, there's 20,000 racers here today. And I try to do the math on, figure out 20,000 racers times the $179 or $200 whatever dollars they have to pay. I'm like, wow, that is a huge amount of cash. and I'm thinking to myself, no wonder why they do this more and more and don't stop these events. It's because it's just a cash cow. And the other interesting thing I heard, and I don't know if this is true or not, is everybody that works the race is a volunteer. So the EMS, the fire, the cast members, those are all non-paid, so they're not paying for any of those people to be there. It's just they volunteer to do it because they like doing it. I was like, wait a minute. Now, all the money they're collecting, they're not paying anybody. They're just keeping it.
That's a very interesting point. I just read today, this being April 3rd, Disneyland is no longer going to have volunteers for their races. They have made some arrangement with some temp agencies who are going to handle they're going to be employed. They're going to be privately employed people helping out with the race. What the person who wrote this up speculates is that it has to do with the city of Anaheim and not having Disney volunteers out on the streets of Anaheim. You need Anaheim sanctioned.
You need a license, bonded, insured. Yeah,
insurance probably. I liked that Disneyland people who really wanted to be there could volunteer and be there. I always got the impression that these were runners and Disneyland enthusiasts, and that's who you're going to get. I don't fault anyone who wants to earn a living and also do that.
Right.
But you may not get the running enthusiasts. Yeah. But it's a business. I don't think that's going to detract from the experience at all. And you're exactly right about a huge pool of free labor that Disney used to get. Yeah. But one of the things I respected is for every volunteer, Disney would make a donation to the charity.
Yes, right. Yeah, it was part of the. I don't think they kept all the money. I think a lot of it went to charity.
Yeah. They make great charitable contributions to all sorts of non-for-profits. Yeah. But yeah, I saw that story. I was going to bring that up too. That's an interesting trend, and I understand that they're doing it for a reason. I hope they don't change that here at Walt Disney World, because it's such a great opportunity for the corporate. Because the first race that we volunteered at was as part of a corporate volunteer group. So I would hope that Disney World never drops that, because that's a great way for people who would never, ever, ever darken the door of a Run Disney race to actually get some hands-on experience, and just like we were, be inspired to not only become more involved in it, but to actually pay our fee and run a race. Yeah. Because it's one thing to volunteer, it's a whole other thing to be in that chute and to realize that you have X number of miles that you have to get through at a certain time. It's a great experience. It's a character building thing, and it's a great opportunity for people, and I love that Disney helps facilitate that.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And if the reasoning is, as I've just read, that it has something to do with the city of Anaheim, I don't imagine that's going to be a problem in Walt Disney World, that even the marathon doesn't leave Disney property.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they'll never have that problem. And the other thing I heard, too, was that the cast members that do volunteer, they get points for every 4 hours they work. They accumulate, a certain number of points, and I'm not sure how the system works. They get a free park ticket. So a lot of the, I'm using my air quotes again, the older grandparent type, cast members use that. And then when their grandkids come down, it's like, hey, here's a ticket, here's a ticket, here's a ticket, here's a ticket. And, they get, tickets to the park for free. I don't know. It's interesting, complex system that Disney has to, keep these things up and running.
Yeah, and Disney's going to recognize whether it was the onus was on the city of Anaheim or not. Yeah. Disney knows when something represents a sound business decision, and we don't always appreciate it. They know what they're doing.
And I'm sure they have to play nice with the city of Anaheim.
Yep, yeah.
All right, so Chris, there's a lot of great information, but tell everybody where they can find you and where they can get your book, The Complete Guide to Run Disney, the Disneyland Edition.
Well, thank you very much, first of all. I appreciate and have really enjoyed this, so thank you. My book is, Anthony, you're familiar with this, is available through Theme Park Press. So you can find it on themeparkpress.com, and it's also available on Amazon. Those are the two places to find it exclusively now. I have had the good fortune to be allowed by Theme Park Press to write a companion volume for this book. So we will shortly have the Complete Guide to Run Disney Walt Disney World edition.
Very nice.
Which, yes, will also be available on Amazon. That's going to be a couple months down the line because Mr. McLean, in the interim, let me do a complete guide to Disneyland drinking. I have just finished the Disneyland Adult Beverage Guide.
Now I'm interested.
Now, you could have called us. We could have done some research for you.
Well, this is something that we can discuss. I remember tweeting at you a little bit, Tony, that I'm trying to organize a research trip for the Walt Disney World drinking guide, and I have just succeeded in that. So there will be companion volumes to both, and I've got an upcoming trip to Walt Disney World, and I would like to look you up if I may.
Yeah, sure. Anytime you're in town, give us a call. Text us, email us, whatever, smoke signal. Yeah, I'd love to, do that. And I think we were talking about, too, not to get off on another tangent, Wagyu beef, right?
I need to find that, and I'm going to be down in a couple weeks. I hope it's still available. I know that...
There's, it was interesting, because I was looking at that today. So if you actually go to the Walt Disney World website and go to, things to do and then, like, all dining, you can type in, as a search, Wagyu, and it'll tell you all the restaurants that have Wagyu beef on their menu. And there's quite a few of them.
Nice. I was there for the Wine and Dine Festival and spent most of my time in Epcot and was just overwhelmed at the incredible food and felt like I didn't even try half of it. So I have, as one of my enthusiasms, exotic and interesting food, and that Wagyu beef sounds like something I gotta try.
Yeah, my suggestion, if you're gonna really go out and have some fun with it, go to Kappa at the Four Seasons. I know they get their beef directly from Japan, and not some third-party purveyor here in Florida. It's directly from Japan, so obviously it may cost you a little bit more, but I think you'll have a really awesome experience. And it's a great place to see fireworks. You can see like every fireworks show, Illuminations, Star Wars, Happily Ever After, or Wishes, whichever one's being shown. But you can see them all from up there.
As I am completely unfamiliar with the bars at the Four Seasons at this point, I do need to investigate that. So I'm going to make that part of my research trip.
Yeah, great bars there too. We can't say enough nice things about the Four Seasons. I feel like I'm a resident there. Okay, so that's it. I want to thank Chris for coming on the show and giving us some great information on Run Disney. Please go out and get his book. It's the Complete Guide to Run Disney, the Disneyland Edition. Like you said, you get it from Amazon or go get it from Theme Park Press. We'll link up to both in the show notes. And as we like to say around here, Chris, we'll see you in the parks.
The Disney Parks Podcast is not affiliated with the Walt Disney Company. All Disney parks, attractions, lands, shows, event names, etc. are registered trademarks of the Walt Disney Company.
Like a bolt out of the blue, fate steps in and sees you